Hi everyone, my name is Ben Ignalino and I am the Project Director for SIBA Services here at National Community Health Partners. We're located here in Tucson, Arizona. This video is going to be an accompaniment to the abstract that I'm submitting called Recruit, Involve, and Commit. Finding common ground for young men who have sex with men of color. It's really a story centered on my work on the front lines, running a CDC program for young men of color titled In the Mix. And so here's a little bit about my background. I was first recruited to be a health educator in 2003. And one of the very first charges that I had was to recruit, involve, and get the commitment of young men in San Diego to be a part of the In the Mix program. And so, with all of the people that I was recruiting, there had to be some standardized onboarding process. And so, we decided as a staff to create a 2 day retreat somewhere in the mountains of San Diego. And so, our very first retreat, which was held in July 2003, we had over 25 young men of color who represented various ethnicities, various socioeconomic statuses, and even immigration statuses. And so we had them together for 2 days to run through some educational workshops, but also to run through some icebreakers and team building exercises. And one of those exercises that we did run through is called Privilege Line. And so in 2003, this was actually my very first exposure to the Privilege Line and a curriculum that was fairly new to the field. And it went like this. To set it up, I had to have everyone kind of stand shoulder to shoulder and they had to hold hands. And because people were already pretty much siloed by ethnicity, I arranged them in a way that they were standing next to people they did not know. And as they held hands, this is the instructions that I gave. I would read a statement, and if the statement related to something in their life, that they would take a step forward. And after taking that step forward, they would look to the left and right to see who moved. And so we went through a lot of different statements, right? So we went through, I like scary movies, or I like watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my favorite holiday is in winter. So those were fairly easy ones. And then came the real statements that we had as a team come up with, such as, I know someone who's been incarcerated, or I myself have been incarcerated. One of the statements that stood out during this exercise read in the spirit of, I love myself and who I am. When I read that part of the whole exercise, that statement, what shocked me and shocked everyone else who was working with me is that no one moved. Everyone stood still. And per the instructions of the contract of the exercise, we said, look to the left and right. And everyone noticed that no one moved. See, the interesting thing about HIV prevention that I've learned, what I walked away from that moment and this part of the story, is that we can learn as many interventions and strategies to work with people. We can also learn how to effectively implement, a form, a document, complete evaluation. But we're not as often taught how to instill self esteem, self worth, or even for service providers, learn how to take care of ourselves better. Um, this privilege line was more than just a privilege line. For me, it was allowing people to see what privilege they had, also view the privilege that others had, but really understand, like, now that I know these things, what am I going to do next with it? And so that's part of the story. That's the story in a nutshell. This is why I want to tell the story, because I think that even as service providers, we forget the privilege that we have from working in urban and metropolitan cities to those that are very rural. And sometimes the resources that we have um, may not be the same. But now that we know this information, what are we going to do with it? So that's the story that I want to share. And that's the story of finding common ground for the young men of color who I worked with. All right. Thank you. My name is Benignolino, and the title of my abstract is. What is the title? Oh my gosh. Why is this so hard? Ugh, I'm super more charismatic than this. I know it. Why is this? I lived this story. Oh my god.